Hello and welcome to In the Making, a series of conversations from North Bennett Street School where we connect with a range of new voices, fields, and perspectives. Before we get into our conversation, we want to thank the many supporters that make our programs possible, including the Massachusetts Cultural Council, the Holt and Bugby Company, and all of our corporate partners in craft. My name is Kristen Odell. I'm an NBSS staff member and host of In the Making. We're live streaming from Windgate Gallery here at North Bennett Street School, so do expect some noise. This is a school. Although students are gone, but still, you're going to hear noise. We're sitting in the middle of the 2024 exhibition, which is themed Then and Now. Our community, students and graduates alike, embraced this theme in so many beautiful ways. And we are speaking with three of them today. We are speaking with India Patel, who's a bookbinding student. After India, we'll speak with Ian Hallowell, a cabinet and furniture making student, and Paula Garbarino, who graduated from both the carpentry and the cabinet and furniture making programs. We'll speak with each one individually and then bring them all in towards the end. So we're going to start with India Patel. India, you graduate next week.
I know.
Right.
Very soon.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we're going to just start with your submissions to the exhibition, one of which is the set book. So let's explain to our audience what is the set book?
The set book is a book that all bookbinding students will do in your second year, and it sort of represents the culmination of a lot of skills that we learn over the course predominantly of the second year, mostly working with leather. We all get the same text. So in this case, it was of Mice and Men, but it's different every year. And sometimes it's a novel and sometimes it's a nonfiction.
Can I ask you right there, were you excited to get Of Mice and Men?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I think the kind of, no matter what it is, I think it presents interesting design opportunities. And I think it was kind of, as far as I know, from the past few years, this is a very familiar text to a lot of us, and we all had different associations of reading it in high school. But for me, it seemed like it would be an interesting one. That there's like a lot of imagery in it that feels conducive to thinking about design. Its familiarity is kind of nice when you're, navigating the world with a portfolio, or you're trying to talk about the work that you've done here. Like, it's a legible thing. So I felt good about it. But it was interesting to have conversations with students about their feelings, because it was like a very mini, sort of opportunity to talk about books and literature, which funnily, like in bookbinding, for the most part, you're talking about bindings and you're talking about book history, but you're not really talking about the text.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great pleasure, actually, of the set book. You're really thinking about the relationship between content and form and binding. And it's a great project.
So the theme of Then and Now brought so many different responses. Some people shared the first object they ever made next to something that they just finished last week. Some shared with us prior careers, and so tell us about what's your then to this now.
I was thinking a lot about, when I submitted this prior, I've always loved drawing and painting, and I still do, but I used to do much more of it. And as I've gotten more into bookbinding, it feels, I mean, in my head, I know that they're related interests, but they feel very different as material processes. And so it was a pleasure with this project to tap back into what I liked about drawing and painting, which for me, it's that sort of the immediacy of making an image with something like charcoal or pencil or paint. I like gestural things. I like the sort of way that a mark can feel really alive or spontaneous. And with bookbinding, this is sort of, I mean, forgive the pun, but like painting it with a wide brush. But often it's sort of like a planned, precise process. You're really thinking about things like design and layout well before the time you're actually executing your design. It feels very different. So with this book, and by the time we've gotten sort of to the end of the program here, where you have sort of more skills at your disposal, it was really a pleasure to think about, like, how can you apply that gestural thing to this very planned process. And for me, that was through playing around with leather dyeing, which is sort of feels a little bit like watercolor painting.
Which this looks like. I mean, we can show it on camera, but another reason for you to come to the exhibition and see it in person. But I don't want to use the word mosaic because that trivializes what
No,
you've
but
done.
yeah, it kind of is.
But it's very they're like mini watercolors.
And the process feels like that, which I wasn't, it was a new venture to me, this sort of getting into leather dyeing. We did it a little bit for a conservation project, trying to dye leather to imitate old leather. Using it in a sort of creative way was a new and difficult and fun. But I also, I love the precision and the planning part of binding. Like, it's not, I loved that there's a way of doing both in the same object. Yeah.
You've been making a lot of paste paper,
Uh-huh.
which you're teaching a class on a workshop. You're doing a workshop of paste paper over the summer.
Yes.
It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Did you incorporate any of those techniques in this binding?
I did. Well, the end papers are sort of like a very simple paste paper. And then in terms of, I think lessons learned in making paste paper were applied to this. So like directly applying, in this case, dye, in the case of paste paper, paste and paint to leather or page. I like when there's like I like playing with applying those things directly, but also pushing them through fabric or through a screen. And in this case, or cheesecloth or tarlatan or something with a loose weave. So I had played around with doing that in a previous painting project. I did a bit of that with base paper, and then I did that with the leather dye. And all of the effects are, I think, very different because the mediums are different, but the process feels like, oh, this can be productive in many different mediums.
And let's talk on your second submission that also touches on then and now.
This is an ongoing project, but I've been binding or making boxes for books of poetry by a particular poet, John Berryman, who's a mid-20th century poet. And I came across his work maybe for the first time, I think about a decade ago. And I think it's, endlessly fascinating. And what's part of the pleasure, I think, of learning more about bookbinding is that you can, as you gain more skills and you gain more information, you can like make more precise decisions about what the final object is like. So what it looks like, but also how it functions,
How it opens,
how
hand feel.
Yeah, exactly. Like what materials, what the choice of materials on the outside do to your experience of reading the book. Whether it stays fully open and why you might want that for a particular text, or whether it requires your like active leafing through it for it to work. I mean, there's certain books I think you would prefer that. And there's sort of similar things to do with boxes. So these three books I reflected a lot on that, the sort of like relationship you can have with the text and how that's different when you're a reader versus when you're binding a book.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
A question about the space that we occupy in here. I was recently asked about what the facilities, what this building means to me, how I use it. I mean, I use it in all sorts of ways, exhibitions, public programs. I'm swimming all around the building all the time. And my first thought to that question was how the students use it. And I think about you and how you utilize this space. I feel like you maximize every drop out of the space, from the tools, just the bindery. And I just want to ask you, what do you feel about that? What's your relationship to the facilities that we have here?
Thank you for saying that. It's an important part of it, the whole experience of this for me, like coming to school here. I feel like I think this is a really common feeling when you're doing when you're not in a school environment like this, is to feel like, oh, if only I had time and space to work on exactly what I want to work on. And it's such an unusual thing to get to do that. So I feel like when I came here, I was like, I want to sort of use it to its maximum. The spaces are amazing. The bindery is, I mean, it's in terms of equipment and tools and space, like it's pretty incredible, but it feels nice to be here. I think that's part of wanting to be here a lot. And then the other aspect of like utilizing the whole building that I was thinking about is I've been lucky to be a student worker here, which involves you end up sort of like at least walking the whole building very frequently and engaging with different departments and seeing other like students in other departments work to develop over time. Like you're there on a Tuesday night and then you're there the next Friday and then you're there, the following Saturday I think has informed the way I've worked. And it's also just been like a wonderful thing to see. And the pace is so different of like how objects come into being in violin versus bookbinding or
Right.
carpentry or whatever. And it's that part of it's been really meaningful to me too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to swap out
Okay.
and we'll see you on the other end.
Should I leave these in?
Yeah. I'll move them up here actually. Hello, Ian.
What's going on?
Fresh out of the shop.
Fresh out of the
Still
shop.
covered in dust.
Great.
For our virtual guest, this is Ian Hallowell, about to graduate from Cabinet and Furniture next week. So I pulled your pieces around here. Your submission to the exhibition is a top favorite of mine personally, because it's a very clear example of progressively growing skills. And for our virtual guests, again, you need to come in person to see this, but Ian submitted a desk made from pieces and stickers and along with a beautiful chair, shield back chair. Is it shield back chair?
Yep.
And a mirror case piece that you just finished within the last month, would you say?
No, I finished that within my second semester as a student here.
All right. So the question I have for you, tying the two into the theme of then and now, putting your placing yourself at this desk, which I like to call dorm room chic. When you finished the desk, what was the sense of accomplishment you felt after making that compared to or next to the sense of accomplishment from finishing such a detailed piece like the shield back there?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think that they're both the sense of accomplishment for either of them is they felt at the time, for where I was during each piece, they felt pretty, it was a good feeling either way, for whether it was the piece today where it's this kind of high level, high execution versus the piece then, which was this kind of low level, low skill.
They both like, yes, I finished this.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the first one was viewed from a whole different lens because they were kind of made for entirely different reasons. And it kind of echoes India's voice of just being here in this building and having the experience of getting to make exactly what you want out of some of the highest quality materials with some of the highest quality help. That's a pretty incredible feeling to have all of that behind a piece that's executed in a really high way versus having virtually nothing with almost no materials and then making something that is exactly what you need in a moment.
Exactly what you need.
And that felt really good. So having the accomplishment of kind of, I think any maker throughout their story and throughout their life, it's not necessarily what you make, it's more what you, the process of making it that feels good. And so I think they both felt really good for where I was at the time.
Yeah. And a side story that you told me about the desk, which is another layer of then and now, is you moved here to go to school at North Bennett.
That's right.
And you needed a desk and that's what you made because you came with nothing.
Yeah, I was living on an island at the time that I made the desk, working on a job site doing construction. And we had just finished doing a bunch of roof rafters and those were all like end cutoffs for those 2x10s.
Yeah.
And so I ended up chopping them up into little bits and gluing them together and making a big, massive slab top that I found a filing cabinet in the trash and screwed some legs on it. I think altogether I probably spent $50 on it. So it was exactly what I needed.
Do you have a sense of time? You just gave me a rough idea of how long it took you to make that, but do you have a sense of comparison of time it took
Sure.
you?
Yeah, well, let's say the desk took me about under a week, and that's with finish and materials. The shield back chair, if I'm including drafting time, it probably took me around 2.5 months
Mm-hmm.
from drafting to finishing.
Yeah. And I
so-
have to note the upholstery, I didn't see it as clearly until I lifted it up a little higher today.
Mhm,
The upholstery job is spotless.
mhm. In that,
Really well done.
so that was a dual effort. I had Nick Meraldo as an instructor, his wife Harmony. So kind of a plug to her business. She's an upholsterer.
She's an upholsterer.
And she held my hand and guided me through that whole process. And then she ended up doing the final fabric. So her and I together, we did it's a traditional upholstery job. So it's all horsehair, as it traditionally would have been done in. And then she did the final cover fabric because the corners get sewed. And then she did the beading on the bottom and the tacking there, which is very challenging to lay that out and execute that. And she's a professional and she did
Yes.
a beautiful job.
Yeah. Something that I heard a few people say about the butcher block
Yeah,
top that you made.
right.
I mean, I've heard your instructors come through and say that, however floppy and sloppy it looks, it was probably a nightmare to glue together.
Yeah, it was absolutely a nightmare to glue together. So I had, the idea of it was to do it as a butcher block, but I was working on a job site. I didn't have a belt sander, and doing that by hand, if you do it on end grain, is a nightmare after glue up. So I did it on edge so I could glue it and run it through the planer. But what I didn't know then, which I know now, is grain direction. And so you have a lot of issues sending that through the planer too. So it was a lot of learning in a process in one moment.
When you, the first thing that you made as a student here, can you express or go back to what you learned from that? I mean, it may be the end grain thing that you just mentioned,
Yeah.
but like, what was the first thing that you learned in the first project that you made as a student here?
Yep.
I mean, first tell me what that was, and then how can we compare it to
Yeah,
the
totally.
desk?
So the first project that any North Bennett Street student in the cabinet and furniture making program, the first thing that we do, I'd say the first real piece of furniture we make is a shaker nightstand. And so one of the things that I tried to do back when I was making that desk, I tried to hand plane the top of it. I had an old hand plane. But looking back on that moment, I had no idea how to use a hand plane. I didn't even know how to sharpen the blade. And when I look back at that moment of trying to use a hand plane and it didn't work, that's partly because the hand plane blade was in backwards. So coming into this program, I knew nothing about hand tooling. And then coming into that shaker nightstand project, the first thing I learned was how to properly tune and use hand tooling equipment, which used correctly can reduce a lot of mistakes and speed up your work.
Yeah,
just
it
by having
adds
bench craft.
efficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah. Similar question that I asked India, and I'm asking you this because I've heard you reference this. You graduate next week as well.
Yep.
And you've told me that you'll be here until the very last second.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask you, that relationship you have to the space, why is that for you? And before you answer, because the easy answer is, why wouldn't I?
Sure.
The space is incredible, but there are many students that look at this as work, and they come here and they work and they go home, and it's like head down while they're here and then they leave. So what is that relationship that you have with the building, and why are you going to be here until the very last second?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. For me, this is my college education. This is my future. And if you go into your future having an opportunity to take every moment and do things that you're interested in and learn as much in those moments. I mean, it's a very quick program. It's 2 years. You have 2 years to be here.
Like that.
You blink and it's gone. So I think there's a lot that I wanted to accomplish here, and there's a lot that I want to accomplish in life. And while I have some of the most valuable people in the woodworking field just to talk to as to work through ideas, I'll use that and take that every moment I have to have amazing equipment, amazing instructors, amazing materials.
Yeah.
And
soak it all up.
Soak it all up. Exactly right. Yeah.
You said to us earlier that you're going to be at your bench up till the second you have to walk to graduation. What are you going to be working on?
I'm drafting some furniture to take away with me to be working on.
Got it.
So again, while you have peers to collaborate with and you're not off on your own and you don't have time to really be as creative, I think, as we always want to when you're under a deadline and working for other people. It's fun to take that time and be working here, doing things that I want to be doing.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
going to cycle through and bring Paula in. Hello, Paula.
Yeah,
Thank you for being here.
thank you for asking me, Kristen.
Yes. I'm going to bring your sweet little piece here, which our virtual guests probably won't be able to see, but we'll hold it up. So I'm going to try not to embarrass you here, but I'm going to flatter you anyway. Your work is so revered by our students here. You know, I engage with, I spend so much time with these students. The way they react to your work or the idea that they'll share a bench with you, it is so great to see. And to this community, to NBSS students, we think of you as a living legend of marquetry, although you are very clear that you learned from the living legend of marquetry, Silas Kopp. So is
Yeah.
that correct?
So Silas came in several times over the years that I was first year as a student and then as an instructor, and he would do a demonstration. He would tell us a lot of background information. It was just totally interesting about the story of marquetry back to possibly Egypt. But definitely through the Renaissance and the marvelous work of the Louis, at the time of the Louis, the kings of France.
All of them.
Yes, he had a funny way of talking, that wonderful man. And he would say, you don't have to have a class with me. Here are my principles. I have written the article. I have even the book eventually. He had a video out, and just go back to your shops and practice. And I certainly screwed up in my day, but got it down, got the principles down. And that was a great love affair that continues.
Yep. So he heavily informed the trajectory of your practice. And so we're going to just share the pieces that you submitted to this exhibition, starting with the $2 chair that you bought from a friend that you caned, that you caned. And that was your first entrance into craft
Well,
or furniture?
I was always searching for things to do with my hands. From day one, as long as I can remember, I was making things, putting things together.
Here's a great example.
And
This is a tiny little rocker made of toothpicks that you made when?
age 9. So I made several pieces of furniture, and the chairs were first, and a little table, and the rockers were, yeah.
It's a perfect example of then and now. Can we set it on your book? There we go.
Well, okay.
And so that was your first entrance into doing something with your hand. And we all know where you landed. Did that chair, which you can kind of see there behind Paula, did that chair plant a seed for you that,
There we go.
oh, I can make a business doing this?
No, there's to find the livelihood that can really click is not obvious. You can pick up a little of this, a little basket weaving, a little ceramics, a little sewing, a little macrame. What is the livelihood? It all seems like a hobby. I came to the chair, and then I immediately realized that the chair itself was not sound, that I didn't know how to glue it properly together, that tools like clamps were beyond me. And So I lived with it as it's sort of a rickety thing. And it was several years later that I realized, hey, the caning is holding it together. I got to recane it after first clamping it properly. And I could do that because of skills acquired at a proper training place called North Bennett.
Well, let's start there. So let's stop there. You graduated the carpentry program in 1980, and then you graduated the cabinet furniture program in 88. What
Mhm.
happened between those two?
In between, I was first exploring a construction job. I didn't have the stamina. I didn't, you can laugh at my little skinny arms. And I did not like heights, but I had the perseverance to find a path which was called cabinetry, working in a kitchen cabinet shop. Actually, one mostly, but then I was loaned out to a couple others. And so I had experience in making kitchen cabinets, using the big machines, learning something about wood, and working a good hard 40-hour week or more, exercising my body and my mind to assemble big boxes. And then the boxes, get a little tired after a while, and you want
It's
to
pretty repetitive.
try to make something else.
Yeah.
And so I came back here.
And so at what point did you find your groove? This is gonna be a confusing ask. The question is, how did you find your groove in the furniture making world and build a business making furniture as we know you now? I mean, you have your furniture has a look, it's all exquisite marquetry, involves exquisite marquetry. How did you find that groove and build a business doing that?
So the foundation is superb here, but it doesn't automatically yield the answer to your question. You need to be open to all the possibilities that come out of that and find your groove, that is something that clicks. So I did a little teaching of kids and some adults. I wrote some articles from the pieces that I had made in the course of my 2 years in cabinet and furniture. I did some repair work. I said yes to any opportunity. I joined a cooperative shop and got sometimes a few jobs from others in the cooperative shop. I met some customers coming through the shop. My family helped me out, just many, many aspects coming together to help me keep going and having work coming in.
I think I hear the when you saying yes to as many things. I mean, that also depends on, your point in life, the bandwidth that you have, but blanket statement, yes, say yes to as many things as you can. And I think of what you just said, taking any sort of job. I'm sure every job that you took informed this in some way and arrived you at this aesthetic that you operate
Yeah.
within and that you've built a business out of.
You have to also over time figure out what you probably should say no to, what you have an affinity for and what you really don't enjoy doing. And you kind of pick and choose eventually. It's not like you really have the luxury of picking and choose. You keep saying yes, and but out of all those yeses, you start saying, what in my downtime from having commissions, which I was lucky enough to have to the bulk of the time, there would be downtimes and you'd say, what should I be exploring that could really differentiate me, be something a little more me than just what this customer wants. Because
Mhm.
each time you have a customer, you need to really satisfy them. You need to listen to who they are and what they want and come across with an answer that is coming together of what you can offer and what they want.
Can you pinpoint a moment in your career where that click was made for you, where you
Well,
decided what that look was going to be?
Going back to Silas, I was first introduced to his work going to an American Craft Council craft fair of the highest quality that was at Rhinebeck, New York. And this would have been in the early 80s, I believe. Just blew me away. These precious little boxes that he was making with the marquetry, and that planted a seed. And I was thinking of color and texture in a way that was beyond my general commission work in, say, the 1990s. And so at the end of the 90s, I decided to buy myself a scroll saw and really pursue marquetry and see what I would come up with in terms of the pictorial. Marquetry offers this wonderful looking into all the figures that wood offers, different cuts of wood, different species have these wonderful range of figures, you know, curls and burls and clusters of like sunbursts of color just because of the cut going through the piece of lumber, or specially selected lumber. And then of course all the colors, mostly natural hues.
It allows you to paint on wood.
Well, that was an expression that Silas Kopp came up with, painting on wood, and it stays fresh, I think, because it keeps applying, being applicable to what you see.
Yeah,
it's like painting, and also one thing I've kind of emphasized is the quality of impressionistic effect that you can have with the glowing ins and outs of the figure.
Well, I am grateful that every year for this annual exhibition, you bring us something so beautiful showing your marquetry. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we're going to bring everybody back in now. So we're sitting at this really very communal table on the center of this exhibition. I do want to take a note to talk about why this is and why we're going to sit here together. One of the things that I learned through planning this exhibition is that this is one of the few places that I know of. So let's slide down. Is that okay? Oh, one of the few things that, not few, one of the many things that I learned in planning this exhibition is that it's one of the few places that I know of where you have people coming to start the same program the same day from any point in their life or career, where you can have an orthopedic surgeon sharing a bench with someone who just graduated from high school. And the fact that they all exist at the same bench in the same room is such a beautiful, powerful thing. And so that's why we have this communal table within this exhibition. And when you all come to visit, sit here, take it in, enjoy it. And that's when I'm gonna ask you all questions. So for all three of you, Paula, what has kept you connected to this community?
I stayed in the area.
That's very pragmatic.
You have open houses. I come every year, mostly, and along the way, there, after I graduated, a couple of years later, Will Neptune and some others developed the workshop program, as it was then called, continuing ed. It's now called
Community education.
Community Education. Very nice title. And I started assisting in that program. It was wonderful to refresh everything that I learned.
So what has kept you connected is that you've stayed connected.
I got to assist teach, and then I started teaching the, and then what else? Your wonderful exhibit here.
I mean, the
Coming to
exhibition
these.
is a great way to keep people connected.
Yeah.
What about Ian and India? You're graduating next week. What is something that you think will keep you connected to the community? And this can be peers that you stay in connection with outside of here.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for bookbinding, but in terms of what we do in the cabinet and furniture making studio, I think if you're ever going to be pushing yourself in terms of what you're making, or if you have a client who asks you to make something that you don't have all the answers to, then something beautiful about becoming friendly with your benchmates and getting to know the community is that you have people who have different skill sets, and you kind of watch them blossom as you kind of engage in this activity of learning together. And, you know, for instance, Paula is an incredible, one of the things that you really set yourself apart from others in is marquetry. You know, so if I ever get a project that I'm a craftsman, I can really, you know, the goal is to be able to make anything. And yet we all have weaknesses and strengths. As you call people and ask them for their strengths when the time comes, or you ask for advice on how to make something that you know someone's made. We have so many different faculty members that have different facets of education and knowledge. And I think that will always bring me back, is I'll always have questions, because one of the things that's beautiful about making is you're always learning.
Good answer.
I just wanted to jump in that I was here a month and a half ago asking Lance,
Yeah.
how is this made, this
Mhm.
piece, that it was different from anything I had explored as a student or since.
That's great. Yeah.
There he was with all the answers. Amazing,
Mhm.
wonderful.
Mhm.
Right. You,
There's like absolutely like hopefully future collaboration with classmates, which people do in amazing and interesting ways. And they're also like, part of why I wanted to come to North Bennett Street School was I came across so many people whose work I admired who had gone through the bookbinding program.
Mhm.
So I think it's I know like it's sort of, you come across NBSS people all over the place. Because our programs, there's like some, you know, we all interact, but they're quite if you're in the bookbinding program, you're really doing bookbinding. If you're in CFM, you're really doing CFM stuff. But there's like over the summer I did an internship at Haverford College, and I had this experience of coming across somebody who'd been at MBSS in the locksmithing program. And it was just this moment of like, yeah, like also I think there'll be moments for keeping in contact with people in other programs. I also think the exhibitions, I mean, that is a huge thing.
yeah, it does. I mean, we, at the opening reception a couple of weeks ago, we have graduates. Every year it's a different decade of a graduate that maybe has skipped a few opening receptions, and all of a sudden they show up, and yeah, it's great. How would you all describe yourselves then and now, sticking with the theme of the exhibition? This can be about your creative practice or about you as a person.
I've been thinking I feel there are like a billion ways to answer this, but one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is how useful it is to go through a program like this and learn how to organize a project, like how to, particularly a long-term one. And I have this feeling that I think some people have this experience earlier in life, but planning a project where you're working with materials and it's a physical thing that's coming into existence is like the most useful way to better understand how to organize your time. Like, I think it should be so much more of kind of K through 12 education because it's like the best. It makes me think like, oh, I wish I had known some of these things when I'd written essays as a high school student. Like it just like, I don't know, it's weirdly clarifying about how to think about efficiency, how to think about workspace arrangement, how to think about your own, like the relationship between your health of your body and your like, you know, headspace and what work you're making. I think it's like best education in that.
Thank you. What
Yeah,
about you,
good
Jim?
answer. I don't know, kind of to echo off of what you said, I think I interpreted it in a little bit of a different way, just because I came into this program so young. But I think I had a lot of anxieties about the world or about where I should be at, or maybe not understanding certain parts of it. And I think one of the things that's really beautiful about attending a trade school is that by making things and being, I guess, a capable of someone who looks at the world from a perspective of how do you make things or how do things work, I guess it kind of took away my anxiety about the future and the problems I'm going to have tomorrow, because I know that I'm capable of problem solving.
So
And it's a super valuable skill that I have now. I also agree. I think, you know, high schoolers and K through 12, you should be learning problem solving and be looking at things and how they work. And I think now certain things just clicked for me in a way that I just feel more comfortable in myself and knowing that when things go wrong, that I have the tools I need to fix them.
It's like the word engineering or mechanical knowledge, being just generally resourceful, knowing what's behind the walls and how things are built and how our built environment is created. We learn these things and then we're less stymied by them. I was just fixing the toilet at home, you know.
No, really, yeah.
Hands on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and pulling back that veneer, like quote unquote, and kind of seeing that all these people who I thought were perfect and everything was, they had such an understanding about it, realizing how little kind of everyone knows about everything and how much you're just rolling with life.
Yeah. I'll just throw in then and now from me. What is something that you like seeing in your peers' work within this exhibition?
Oh, this is like a very difficult one because I feel like there are so many objects, and I'm consciously not going to mention either of your pieces, but they're wonderful. When I was wandering around, I kept like there were certain details that felt really playful and sort of surprising, and I kept wanting to look at them, and I kept wanting to return to them. And one thing that comes to mind is the lemons on Juliana's mirror. I feel like they're so charming and they're so lovely. And there's a case over in the also all of the bookbinding stuff, but I can't mention all of the bookbinders, but the case with Aspen Golan's
The
brush,
brushes?
which are
Yes.
so solid but so playful. And then on the other side of the case, there's a Emily Stanley's binding that has tooling that has this sort of wonderful scalloped edge, which is kind of has a similar sort of form. I feel like those kind of details are really fun to see across the disciplines.
So you were you're being drawn to really beautiful techniques.
I think so.
Yeah.
And like the like little detail that you keep thinking about.
Yep.
I think I like seeing kind of where people were or who they were, because like you said kind of earlier, you can have a high schooler and a hand surgeon next to each other in a bench, and I think that's a really wonderful theme because you strip away all of that history when you come here, and everyone's on equal playing field. We're all just makers. It doesn't really matter who you are, where you're coming from, what your financial background is. We're just here to make. And then kind of bringing that theme back in and bringing someone's history and kind of seeing where they were and who they are and seeing their personality in the furniture, it adds a whole new depth in a way that you're seeing things kind of almost as if they are that furniture, and you're seeing personalities, you know, the lemons, you're seeing someone's character in the furniture they're making. It's very serious, but also very playful. And I think that's really wonderful to kind of learn about people and who they were and what they're making.
Yes.
Kristen, this was a really clever idea of yours, and it has to do with what the what the seed of the kernel of a person was. Did they go off on one pathway and then recreate themselves by coming here? Or is there a trajectory that's straight? Kind of like what I'm representing here, you know, I'm not going to talk about the other kind of paths that I tried and
Right.
failed at, but you know, it's just a fascinating story. The room is full of stories.
Yeah.
And
it is.
that's what I love. I can't even hardly differentiate one from the next. I just like, oh, here's another story. Oh, here's another story.
Good. Well, my favorite, I mean, I love it all and I am so immersed in everything because from start to finish and then through August, I'm looking at these pieces, I'm talking with all of you, working with you so much. But I'm so drawn to those folks who shared a very first object they made, because even that took a bit of an act of bravery, you know, to show, I mean, there's a lot of pride in that to show where they are now, but just these little objects that someone made in high school shop class next to this unbelievable carved leather topped card table behind us. Someone's first woodworking project, this chess board that's so rudimentary and so simple. And I just love the bravery in folks for sharing that. You included your desk, which I really pushed you to share, but it's a favorite of mine. Please come and see the exhibition in person. It's up now through August 10th and it's open Monday through Saturday. So 9 to 5 during the week, Saturday 10 to 2. And you can see these wonderful folks work on view. So please join us in person. And that's our show. Thank you all. This has been so great. Thanks, Krista. And we'll see you all next time, or we'll see you here at the exhibition.